Dennis, I don't know what that was all about, but as soon as you sat down, the whole choir stood up and left. Now, he told me that on the way out. Several of them told him that it was nothing personal, but, you know, that's a lot of people to be nothing personal, so I don't know about this. But I'm going to pray today that the words of my mouth and the meditation of each and every one of our hearts will be pleasing to God, who is our rock and our Redeemer. So today we're going to be talking about India, and I'll be giving you a report of India. Last week we talked about Nepal, and the theme of Nepal was encouragement. And I challenged you last week to go home and to find one Christian and encourage them. Did anybody take me up on that challenge? Did anybody encourage another Christian last week? If you did, just raise your hand so I can see. I see some hands. Good, good. And I can almost guarantee that by encouraging them, you were encouraged. Were you not? I see some heads nodding. You know, and that is the way that God works. God challenges us to do tough things, and when we do them, we find that the tough thing we thought was almost beyond us is the very thing that blesses us most. By doing what God says to do, He blesses us. And when we avoid those things, we miss out on that blessing. Well, that was the theme for last week, was encouragement. This week, I've chosen Matthew 28, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded. This week is teaching, preaching, and evangelizing. That's the theme for my time in India. The place where I went in India was a little place called Manipur, and it was in northeast India. You can see it in that little black circle there, right on the border of Burma, and that's where I was, right up there. Oh, thank you. I will get that, and maybe this will help. You can see it right up there on the northeast side, Manipur, and we were in the capital of Imphal, just on the outskirts of the city, in a place called Chil Chil Asian Mission Society. Chil Chil is a Korean word meaning 77. Probably has something to do with Jesus' exhortation to forgive a person who sins against you 7 times 70 or 77 times, depending on how you want to translate that. And it is supported by Koreans. And this was the entrance of the campus. This is the first structure you see when you step on the campus. It is their chapel, seating about 500 people in their chapel. And you'll notice the steeple there is transparent. It's just a skeleton of a steeple. The first time I saw that, I wanted to take a picture of it, and we were driving down the car, and I saw a couple churches in Imphal, and I wanted to get a picture of that because it was so unusual. Then very quickly I realized that it was the standard way of putting a steeple on a building, was this kind of ironwork skeleton of a steeple with a cross on top. So I was able to get this picture. The campus is fairly extensive. They've got rooms for the students, rooms for the teachers. Not all the teachers stay on campus, but several of them do. And residents, all sorts of buildings for the workmen, and different things that are going on. This is the president's house. And I met here. David is my friend that I met in Dallas, and so I was in that house for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and meeting with him. And this is their building project. They're building classrooms, and it's about 4 stories tall, as you can see. Notice that the, what's that called, scaffolding. Notice that the scaffolding is made of bamboo. And bamboo scaffolding is not uncommon. You see it here, it's 4 stories tall. This is pretty neat to look at, but when you see it about 10 stories tall, that's when it really takes your breath away. You see bamboo that rises up the side of a skyscraper, and it amazes you, the strength of the scaffolding. This is where I actually stayed. My room was the last window on the first floor on the far end of that blue building. This is what it looked like on the inside. You can see they treated me just like a princess. I loved every minute of it. The bathroom, I did have the luxury of having a pot that you could sit upon as opposed to the squatty potty that you saw last week. The green bucket in the middle of the floor is my shower water. It is heated. I had the luxury of having hot water, which was a luxury. I heard many of the students outside my window with their cold water splashing it on and making all sorts of noises like, ooh, like that. So every morning around 5:30 they would deliver a bucket of hot water, and I would shower right there. You can see the drain there by the trash can. on the floor, right there by that white pillar off to the left. You shower right in the middle of the floor. Bathrooms in Asia are tiled, and so to clean them, you take a hose and you spray them down. But that's where we were. I did not have running water. Anything that I wanted to do, the big green bucket on the left is for flushing the toilet. The sink did not work, so my water was always delivered. This was another room that we had, and you may notice the orange thing here in the foreground. That is a little pot filled with charcoal, and it is on fire, and this was what they did for warmth. They would bring one of these little things in your room, and you would hover over it for warmth. It never generated too much heat. It was not intended to heat the whole room because the windows were always open. So, I mean, it dropped down to 40 in the night, so it got pretty chilly there. But in the evenings, you would hover around these little coal stoves. At first, I was very nervous about this, thinking that I might wake up dead. But then I realized they do this all the time, and since the windows are open, that it's not such a big deal. So I got used to that pretty quickly. You can see the tile work here is just beautiful. You'll notice that the vest that she is putting on is the vest that I'm wearing now, and it was a gift. My first night there, they give this vest to the preachers and evangelists who come. Now, I want to explain a little bit about this vest. It's got several symbols on it. I told you last week that the main people, the Naga people, were the people that I was working with, and Nagas were headhunters up until Britain outlawed headhunting for whatever reason they chose to do that. But the Nagas retained their tradition, and then on this they have the spear, which was used to kill the enemy, and the machete type weapon here, the little sword that they had, about that long, and that was used to behead the people, off with their heads, as the woman in Alice in Wonderland says, the queen says. And so these are the symbols of the Naga people. And this bird is a very difficult bird to catch. And so they have a picture of that bird. Basically this, and the bull on the back also is a representation of kind of a victory. So basically what I'm wearing is tantamount to a gold medal in their Olympics. So the winner of their competitions would get something like this, very traditionally decorated with those symbols in it. My first night there, they gave this to me and explained all this, and also the spears on the back. So the first thing that the focus of my time in India was about preaching, and I did a lot of preaching. Oftentimes it was every day or multiple times daily in different places in different settings. I preached a lot here in the chapel, Sunday mornings, all sorts of different settings with different audiences, different sermons, first-person narratives. Some of the preaching that I did was actually much harder just to get to the site to preach. You can see we're riding along the road here. It's not a great road. It's a mountainous road with lots of switchbacks and cliffs, at which you could look over and see down the side of the cliff. You can notice that truck on the right here with the big blue package on top, a little overloaded there. That's coming from Burma, from Myanmar, with their load to sell. We saw trucks like that all the time. I kept trying to get a picture of one, and that wasn't even the most heavily loaded truck that we saw. But we did see several of those trucks on their side with their contents strewed out across the road. So it was not a very safe thing to do, but we kept seeing them and they kept doing it. So to get to this next site preaching, we drove 3.5 hours over bumpy switchbacks, cliffs. I mean, I got nauseous. It was not a fun ride. 3.5 hours was nice though, because I was told it was going to be about a 5-hour ride. But because we had an armed escort with this politician, we had about 15 armed soldiers with us. We were able to pass through several checkpoints without stopping. Otherwise, we would have had to wait in line until we got through the checkpoint. They had to check every vehicle. So I had traveled before in places with armed soldiers in Bangladesh, but I believe we only had 1 or 2 at that occasion. I've never traveled with 15 men with semi-automatic and automatic weapons. The van in front of and this is only 2 of the 3 cars that you can see. There's a third one behind us that also carried men. The one in front was a road clearing party as the politician. He's there in a tweed jacket right above the hood. He's a local politician. Basically, what you would say is the head of a county. He would be like York County chairman. And he is a Christian, and he's a good friend with David, who is standing right beside him over his left shoulder. And so David asked him for a favor, and since he is a Christian and a strong believer, he's trying to build up churches, trying to start churches, trying to help churches, and he agreed readily to taking us out there so that we could preach and bring his soldiers with him for protection, because there are 20-some factions, militant factions on the border of Myanmar and India who are fighting for control, and so we did need an armed escort when we went there. That road clearing party, as I started to tell you, it was very humorous the first time I got in the car. Well, let me just tell you, I was told that we were going to Myanmar and that somebody would be picking us up and to meet at the front of the chapel at a certain time. I got there and we were waiting, and I was waiting, and I didn't see David, and I was standing with one of the other teachers of the school, and I hear this loud honking and the shouting, and suddenly the gates of the school fly open, because these big metal gates, they fly open, and in comes this 3-caravan car with soldiers running, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? Have they come for me? And these soldiers jump off, and they all circle around, and they're carrying their weapons, and they're looking all around, like they're securing the area, and I'm like, am I going to have to fight here? What's going on? And of course, with the weapons, they would probably win. But I was very nervous, and then the second car pulled up, and the third car pulled up, and out steps this man with the tweed jacket, and he walks over to David and shakes his hand, and they walk over and shake my hand, and they're like, okay, let's go. And I'm just like, okay, like, are you sure we're going to go with this guy? Because I have no idea who this is. And so we get in the car, and I'm like, so the politician's sitting in the front seat, and David and I are in the back seat, and I'm like trying to figure out like what's going on, who is this guy, where are we going, am I going to prison or something? Like, so but you don't want to ask because you don't want to offend the guy. So I'm like, so who is this? And like I'm trying to wait till he's on his cell phone so he's not paying attention. I'm like, so who is this? And he explains to me the whole thing. And as we're driving down the road, the road clearing party is up front, and they're beeping and they're honking and they're waving cars out of the way. They've got sticks. They're beating on the sides of the trash truck, the dump trucks, getting everyone to move off the side. It was really fun to watch and be a part of. So all of that to get us to this little church, the Moray Baptist Church, on the border of Myanmar and India. Now, I couldn't really go into Myanmar because of the political situation. I didn't find this out until after the 3.5-hour nauseous ride that got us right up to the border. But what they did do was, this was within walking distance of the border, they contacted the Burma church and invited them to come to this church. They could cross the border. And so several of the members of that church came to hear me preach this evening. Here is the compound of the Moray Baptist Church. Everything that you see belongs to the church. You also see my armed escort there. And here we are preaching, again, with translation. Because several of these people were from Myanmar, they did need translation because they don't speak English in Burma. And I'm using Burma and Myanmar interchangeably because, frankly, I don't understand all the politics. And I think Myanmar is what the people who are in charge want to call it today, and I think that Burma is what it used to be called and what the people want it to be called, so I'm bouncing back and forth, and I'm sorry for that. But Burma and Myanmar are the same country, just depending on who you talk to. But here I am with translation, preaching that evening. The church is a fairly small church. There was probably 30, 35, maybe 40 people there altogether. And the kids, again, loved hanging out with me, getting pictures of me. I must have took 50 pictures with different people. They kept wanting to come up and take pictures, and every time they'd come up, it was either David and Goliath or Zacchaeus and Jesus. Depending on who it was. I always told them I liked Zacchaeus and Jesus better because of the end of the story. I didn't like being associated with Goliath in the end of that story. They did present us with gifts of shawls. David is sitting immediately to my right. My companion. David is taking classes at Dallas Theological Seminary, as am I, and we met last January, and he invited me to come to India, and that's how it began, and we met again last June at another class, And so that's how I ended up going to India. Some of these gifts that they gave me are the things that are on display in the back of the sanctuary. So if you get the chance today, take a